Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 48 of the Second Look Sports Show. If you haven't tuned in last week, new format, we got all the guys ready to rock. Not today, Justin Arnberg not with us, but we do have Brandon Brown. We do have Cristian Ceniti. And boys, there's a ton to get into this week. Now, if you're in Toronto, there's probably some uplifting news if you're somewhat of an NFL fan. If you're a basketball fan, you're in good spirits. If you're a Leaf fan, maybe not so much. But maybe we should start in the NFL where they basically are king as of right now. And let's start local. Brandon, you are a Buffalo Bills fan. If you're listening to this today, this is Friday, but yesterday, the new head coach and promotion from Offensive Coordinator Joe Brady joins the staff as the head coach. He was introduced today by the organization, by Brandon Beane. And it was funny because we just talked about it last week, how poor of a press conference they had. And now I don't know if we got a chance to kind of review this one, but it's ultimately in better spirits. So I'm actually going to go to you, Brandon, first. And just kind of see, like, what are your thoughts on this hire? Where do you think the team goes moving forward? We can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's definitely been a bit of a polarizing hire, it feels like, where, yes, I think people understand that Joe Brady's done a fantastic job as the Bills OC. You know, Josh Allen, 2 years removed from an MVP. You know, James Cook this season, rushing leader. Like, their offense is one of the best in the NFL, and there's no doubt about that. He's been a huge part of it. But I think the confusion kind of lies with the signaling around McDermott's firing, and how, you know, Terry Pagula and Brandon Beane were up there saying, you know, we've kind of hit a wall in the playoffs. We're looking for maybe a new culture. We want to kind of find something that's going to take us over the top. And not to say Joe Brady can't do that, because there's no indication that he won't be a great head coach. He obviously has done great as a coordinator, and he seems to be a guy that the team likes and wants to play for. But again, it's just kind of, how does that make any change in terms of the culture? You know, you're going to have the same guy who's now leading the team. He's been there alongside the guys who were leading it before, and seemed to get along with a lot of what was going on. And they seem to have, you know, a pretty close relationship, at least between Beane and Joe Brady. They seem to really like working together, and they seem to want to move forward together. And I think Beane's the one who's kind of setting the tone in terms of, obviously, who's going to be in the building and who's going to be taking charge in terms of a leadership role. So I'm interested to see what everything looks like, obviously, going into next year. But I think that's kind of where people are looking, as to the signaling around this. And is there something, you know, behind the scenes where maybe Sean McDermott was kind of just squeezed out a little bit, and it wasn't really so much about the team, you know, underperforming or doing anything that they've talked about. It's just, well, we kind of just want to get our guy in here and bring him in and keep him in the spot. So I think that's kind of where the two worlds have gone. I think I said to you guys, I wanted the young guy Udinski from the Jags. I know Brady's only like 36. He's not like an older. He's no spring chicken. He's still in his prime, probably, in terms of finding his role, especially going into a first-time head coach job. But I definitely thought you just want to have a different voice, someone who hasn't been around, who can kind of set the tone a little bit differently and maybe bring a new kind of energy to the team. And if Joe Brady's, you know, going to kind of elevate his leadership style with the new role, then we'll see, and hopefully that works out. But it's definitely, like you said, been an interesting decision. And I from what I've heard today, the press conference went well. So it is interesting, that contrast of where they were a week ago, and now they seem to be signaling like the ship is steady. So.
Yeah, I won't lie, Brando. You sold me on Udinski last pod there. You know, I was kind of like, ooh, this is a good sales pitch here. And then I did see at some point he did start following the Bills. I don't know if it was on Instagram or X, I forget which one, but it's funny how that always happens and then it goes nowhere. So yeah, never take those as anything concrete. But
he definitely wanted that job, because I think, from my understanding, the way that the you know, the events played out is he interviewed for the Bills job, was definitely interested, and was interviewing for the Browns job as well, I believe. Kind of pulled out of that one, I think, with some hope that he would get the Bills one. And then basically, as soon as he didn't get the Bills job, he just said, okay, I'm going back to Jacksonville. So I think, to me, that signals that was probably the only job he was seriously interested in. And I think that does speak volumes, I think, about where the organization is, especially after last week, when it felt like the chaos was coming and maybe coaches don't want to go there. It still feels like there's a lot of interest in Buffalo in terms of the positions they have. We'll see who they decide on for a new defensive coordinator. But I'm sure that will be a a pretty big name who will come in and help them shore up what was probably their biggest flaw last year. So it's been a decent start to the offseason, but we'll see how things play out once we get to players and of course coordinators too.
Yeah. Why does it feel like it never gets to a point where like you bring up the following, unfollowing? I feel like that always turns into a story, mainly in social media, but it always like gets play, and then it never ends up turning into anything, whether it be people or coaches following or unfollowing. Because I remember, like, wasn't it AJ Brown? I don't know if this year or last year he unfollowed the Eagles. I might be making that up, but I know things like that have happened and then nothing changes. So I don't know where that comes from.
It's so countless that you can't even recall a specific one, because it does feel like a once a month occurrence, depending on whatever is the topical story of that month. Yeah. In the Joe Brady of it all. I from what I learned about Joe Brady through this year and some of the fan viewpoint on him, I think he was rumored, mid-season to be interested in potentially interviewing on another head coaching job on another team. And some of the fan reaction I saw there, I can't remember the specifics of it, but fan reaction I saw online was like, oh, please, opposing team, go hire this guy. It'll be a great hire, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, in a sarcastic sense. So I think the view I saw from a fan perspective is different than the view I saw after he was hired. I think I saw a lot more media and football inclined people giving the okay for this hire. Maybe it is a safe one. And in the press conference, I think Bean, or maybe it was Pagula that was, I think it was Bean that was talking about continuity and wanting continuity with this. So it's less a foundational change and more just a new paint job on the house, which it's a safer route. And I think to your guys' point, like, is this a fully new direction? No, it's not. And I think as well, to Brandon's point, for me as someone who doesn't know the specifics about Joe Brady scheming this and that, I think I'll put a lot more stock into what those player changes are this offseason. We can hear wide receiver every week, but if there isn't a change there, then I probably feel the same way about the Bills going into next year.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny too that you mentioned quickly the idea that they're going to change kind of their scheme. It really is under question, because a lot of people were saying, and what I've seen, even like you said, people who know, the schemes that teams are running, the schemes that individual coaches want to put in play. And there has been some question about whether or not the offense was completely Brady's, this year even, or the past years. Like, was he running his, 100% full scheme, the same thing he'll run as a head coach? Or how much was Sean McDermott involved? And I'm sure they have other, voices that have, a say in there too. So it definitely is going to be interesting to see if the offense is the same, but with hopefully a couple better pieces added. That'll only really juice, the production they have on offense. But for me now, like the attention will turn to the defense, and we'll just have to see where it comes out.
Yeah. And I think that's the fail safe. And I wonder how much Josh Allen actually had a hand in this hire. And if he did, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a big factor, because obviously you want to stick with continuity as kind of being the big buzzword that we've spoken about here, but just comfortability. I think like when you have a guy like that, obviously we talked last week as well about how this job is probably highly coveted because a lot of your work is pretty much set up foundationally for you, i.e. you have this guy that can make plays in certain ways. But interestingly enough, I think it's just, are you able to use Josh Allen to the best of his abilities? I think he is a great player when he's able to move a little bit around and he's not scared to stay in the pocket because he can move. He's got the legs for it. And I think as he's been a little bit better and more mature in his career, he's been able to make decisions as to when to run and when not to run. Now, that Denver game aside, a lot of people are giving him grief for that one end of the second quarter run where he fumbles the ball. I mean, that's a miscue and it happens, but you have to be able to kind of spin that cycle and go, okay, well, one play shouldn't define an entire game in that sense. So all of this to say, I don't know enough about Joe Brady as a person after this press conference to say he was the number one guy, but I think if you're kind of trying to be stable and preach stability in the organization, it is a little bit weird that it does feel, I think you mentioned it earlier, Brandon, like McDermott after this really does seem like a bigger scapegoat as we get further into this process, because you're just going to move another guy that was likely in his ear up into his position. And now again, he has nothing to say as a result of it. But I don't know. I don't know if Udinski was the right move. I still just look at a guy who's 36 and I'm like, I mean, Sean McVay is an incredible football mind, and he was hired, I think, I don't know the exact age, but early 30s, and it's worked out. It's probably a one-off to say, like, this guy's going to be the next Sean McVay, but I'm thinking, like, at that age, it's crazy to think that you're going to move into a role to kind of lead the offense when what I don't even know how old Josh Allen is, like late 20s, early 30s. Maybe that's a good relationship because you have maybe a similar, not because you're that similar in age, but maybe you have a similar mindset when it comes to offense. So maybe that works out, but I'm looking forward to it. And I think they're just happy that this process is probably over, especially after last week. And you're like, we can focus now on the offseason and OTAs and moving forward in that direction.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. So a lot of other NFL stuff to talk about. Maybe we'll finish our NFL topic with the Super Bowl in a second. But I think the biggest news this week was sticking in the AFC East, i.e., former Patriots legend, you could say that, is Bill Belichick. 6 Super Bowls won with the Patriots, 2 others as a coordinator, and yet not going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame anytime soon. So this story came out earlier this week that basically the nuance of it is he did not receive all the votes to be voted in as a first ballot Hall of Famer, as Bill Belichick's first year of eligibility was this year. And there's a lot of speculation as to why was he not voted in automatically as a first ballot Hall of Famer. He did not receive 40 of the 50 votes that you need from the committee in order to be inducted in. I believe it was yesterday that the Pro Football Hall of Fame goes, okay, we're going to release a statement, say we're going to go investigate this. Anybody that was acting out of the accordance of the rules is going to be what happened? I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. I know there's like conspiracy conversation. Just thoughts on this in general. Like what are we thinking about this entire conversation?
Man, I don't even know if it's possible to have like an alternate viewpoint on this one other than they plain flat out got it wrong. And I'm referring to the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters side of things. Like there is so many layers to this. I even trying to play the alternate viewpoint, all I can think is like, I don't know, do they know more about Spygate, Deflategate than the public knows? Do they have something incredibly damning? But that's highly speculatory. We can't even go there. Based on what we have in front of us and Bill Belichick's resume, the question should have been whether he goes in unanimously or not whether it's first ballot or not. So listen, the statement goes out yesterday. They're going to investigate. Is that just a save face part of it? Is anything going to come of it? Does something deserve to become of it? I don't know. I think my biggest takeaway from this, I just look towards the Baseball Hall of Fame side of things and seeing how much the transparency of voting has really, I think, improved like the quality of voting. I think we have way less discourse about who ends up in the MLB Hall of Fame on a year-to-year basis. I think that's because people have to justify their votes. We're not here trying to speculate about how people come to these results. And I think really Football Hall of Fame and really just Hall of Fames across sports could definitely benefit from just going the transparency route. I think that is the outcome. I think maybe a silver lining of this, that this is a disaster that this happened, but this could move the conversation forward on transparency going forward.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Cristian. I think the surprise of this whole story was just, I think that it was not on anybody's radar, obviously, because I obviously, voting and stuff wasn't announced, or maybe it was, but nobody really pays much attention. And if it did, everyone would have thought the same thing Cristian just said. It's like Bill Belichick is a no doubt about it first ballot Hall of Famer, and yeah, whether or not he's unanimous should probably be the only question. And I don't even think that would be a question if you really go back and before this whole chaos started. 9 out of 10 people would probably say, yeah, he's probably a unanimous Hall of Famer, maybe if not clearly the best coach in NFL history. So I mean, it's one of those things that you just kind of want to know who it was that decided not to do that, because then you can start to really put the pieces together, whether it was, anything personal, or maybe it was, more insider information that we're not privy to about Belichick, or maybe it's just, this guy has a bias towards another team or another region, or he just doesn't, maybe there's somebody a little younger, or I don't know, like there could be many, many different reasons. I'm not even really aware of, I think it's the media, I think, has some part in it, but I think like former coaches or other Hall of Famers, I think, vote as well. Yeah. I know Bill Polian.
From what I saw, it's mostly it's mostly media members, but like you're saying,
Right.
they are like scattered in there. Some guys who aren't media only. Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a variety, but yeah. Amanda, what do you have on this here? Do you have something that we haven't brought up yet? Because
No, ultimately, like I think the first thought I had was his tenure as 1 year head coach at North Carolina like that damning? And then like that was my first thought. Obviously, that's not the main topic. It's the Spygate. It's Spygate. It's the Deflategate, which I think are so like subpar conversations when it factors into this. Because then when you look at it from more of like you extrapolate and you think what criteria would there be for anybody to get voted in as a first ballot Hall of Famer if he's not sort of like the standard, or at least from a coaching perspective? Because the rumblings I've heard is that it's difficult to get in as a coach on your first year of eligibility. I know like when we look back on it in like a year or two, when he gets voted in maybe as like a second ballot, this conversation probably goes away in some respects. Some people will probably still be stamping their approval of like whether it was the right or wrong decision. But right now it's obviously a topic. And I think what's interesting is that there's not a lot of situations in sports where everybody is like, this is a right or wrong decision. A lot of times there's subjectivity involved. I'm not someone who wants to see the Patriots succeed ever. Obviously, Brandon, you're similar. You're in the same division. You're a Bills fan. And this can be pushed aside from the Pats altogether, who are in the Super Bowl. Like, it's just like cinema what we're watching here.
Yeah.
No, apparently.
I mean, the one
Brent,
case to play devil's advocate, and I think it is a different scenario, is that, you know, you look at the Baseball Hall of Fame and the reluctance to allow, you know, the guys from the steroid era to get into the Hall. And that's purely based on the idea that, hey, cheaters never prosper, I would imagine. Like that's, you know, they're hard and true on that. And I mean, maybe I don't think there's really been a case in the NFL where someone who's been, you know, convicted maybe is the wrong word, but accused and found guilty, I guess, of cheating and reprimanded for it, was in the Hall of Fame too. So it could be just that's, you know, guys, you kind of get that in your head. If that's kind of your principle, then I can understand a couple got like maybe, but I think seeing whatever less, you know, more than, I guess if it's 50 voters, you know, you're talking more than 20% of the voters feel that way. I think that to me, you probably have a variety of reasons is what like I think Cristian said. It's like maybe a couple guys are feeling that way about the cheating and are just like super, super strong on that point and are not going to waver, but it feels like there may be other things happening. So I think that's why the story has kind of blown up so much.
Even if we assume the non-nefarious option where I am cool with if people feel very strongly about the cheating part of this and that is their reasoning.
Sure.
But it goes back to the transparency. If we have transparency with the voting, I don't think this is it's a story. It's a big story, but I don't think it's a backlash type of story like we're having now, right?
Yeah.
I think we'd be cool with people giving their position, saying, here is my reasoning, here's why. We might not be happy with it, but you can at least understand someone's reasoning. And it's the fact that we're left in the dark on that makes this so a bigger story than it could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I would bring up here, a question for you guys. If it is the cheating, once again, if that is where people are pointing the finger, how does voting for Tom Brady go? Like, if that is what the question marks are, do you only point the finger at Bill Belichick and not Tom Brady? How do you differentiate that? Yes, Tom Brady factors into the success. I mean, no, some people argue that it's Belichick that is the mastermind, right? This is a conversation that goes on all the time. How do you separate those two?
Yeah, I wonder if it's like players getting less or special treatment. And I don't know if there's any signs of that by any stretch. People will probably argue that, yeah, he won that extra Super Bowl in Tampa by himself. I don't think that really negates all of the other conversation. I don't know. Like if there was one guy in any sport right now that is up for like the Hall of Fame anytime soon and is a guaranteed unanimous, like we suggested, it's him. Like there's not a lot of guys that get unanimous voting. And I don't know if you can describe another guy that is the pinnacle of his sport and is about to enter that part of his career, just basically getting into the Hall of Fame. I don't know. Like, he has to, at this point, it does feel like there's precedent and you would have to be held to the same standard. But because this is such a big conversation and because this isn't going into the night quietly, a lot of people in the Hall of Fame now, whether a process has actually changed or it's just sort of a mentality that people have going in and it's in the back of their minds, I can't not vote for him now because it's going to blow up even more. I think this conversation has almost shifted the thought to, all right, Tom Brady has to get in now so we avoid all this media dust up. I would vote him in unanimously. That's all I can really say. But it probably will factor in. It'll be a conversation now that this first initial conversation has been had.
Yeah, I mean, I expect some hypocrisy for sure from these voters, just because. Yeah, and I agree, because you can look at it, I think, either way. Like, Spygate, more on the coaching side, you can, no argument there. Like, that's a Belichick thing. I'm sure Brady benefited from it, whatever. But Deflategate is kind of the opposite, where people viewed that as like Brady's thing, and he got suspended for it, and that was a whole thing, right? Like, Belichick kind of threw him under the bus, and we still to this day don't really know who knew what in that regard. So I think it is very interesting, or it will be very interesting to see how people treat Tom Brady. I expect that they will vote him in. Maybe it's not unanimous and there are maybe a couple holdouts, but I expect him to get in on the first ballot. And I think it's mostly because of like I said, kind of that, whether or not these guys will admit it, but there probably is some level of like personal just feelings and bias towards, a coach who maybe didn't treat you very well or wasn't very open or whatever. And Tom Brady, who probably was gracious to everybody he saw. And like, you just have maybe a different level of feeling about them, or even if you don't have that kind of connection, it's just like a whole other thing. Like Alex said, players are often treated differently than coaches. So that's just kind of what I expect to happen. And yeah, I think especially if this vote, prompts some sort of transparency, you're going to bet that these guys are going to, vote differently when it comes to knowing that they have to release their votes after the fact. So it feels like maybe a watershed moment where we may never, we're going to look at these votes, every year the same way that we're looking at this one.
Yeah, I have one more point.
I've got one last. Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind, Cristian, then you can wrap this bad boy up. You made a good point, pardon me, Brandon, where you brought up the fact that like these teams were Brady, Belichick, Patriots, they were punished for these scandals. I know for Brady, he was suspended 4 games. I believe the team was fined $1 million. And for Deflategate, for Spygate, I believe they were like draft picks were forfeited. So what's weird is that they paid their penance for their mistakes. And I feel like most people in sports have. What's accomplished by not voting someone in on their first try and they're voted in on their second? Yes, some people think that it's like the sanctity of there's only so many people that are voted unanimously on the first ballot, but the world knows that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I just find it almost like a weird way to punish someone by not really punishing them, because in 10 years, this will still be a little footnote, but that's probably all it will be, is a footnote. This guy is still going to be a Hall of Famer. So I do find it sort of weird when you look at it from more of a comprehensive view to be like, what is this really accomplishing if you're not voting him in? I don't know.
It's petty. It's basically what it is. It's petty behavior, and linking both of your guys' thoughts together, where there maybe is these personal feelings between media members and Belichick not enjoying that relationship. I just wanted to make one example here. It's a guy who wore more of that Blue Jay than the modern one, Dave Stieb, right? And I'll give credit to Dave, our boy Dave Leo, who he put me on this YouTube documentary on Dave Stieb by Secret Base. Check out Secret Base's YouTube channel. You can find it there. I want to say it was like 4 hours, 5 parts. It was incredible.
Damn.
And it was all about how he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, how he was deserving of multiple Cy Youngs that he didn't get. And just how basically what it boiled down to is media people didn't like Dave Stieb. And we didn't have transparency in the Baseball Hall of Fame at that time. Lo and behold, he's not a Hall of Famer. So, transparency, that's what I would want here. That is exactly what I would want. I think that would be the best police moving forward.
Agreed. I agreed fully. I think that's the best way to kind of negate and just dissolve all of these issues when we think about them in a vacuum. I think we have one more conversation football wise, and it's probably the biggest one you can have, is the Super Bowl's upcoming in a week and 2 days, give or take. When you're listening to this is Sunday, February 8th is the Super Bowl. Now, we haven't talked about the AFC and NFC championships. We don't need to do a deep dive. We sort of gave our bets, and now I know the AFC was kind of a tricky one for us. It was a bit of a battle back and forth. Ultimately, I think what happened was what we anticipated happening. The NFC Championship was a lot closer. It was a lot more strategic. It felt like there was a lot going on. And the snow kind of factored into the AFC Championship. Now, I'm not saying the Patriots didn't deserve it. I'm just saying that is a fact of what happened. I don't know if either of you have thoughts on the game that you want to quickly discuss, or if we want to just give our bets. But maybe, Brandon, we go to you first. Any thoughts on those games before we kind of look ahead?
No, 100%. They were both pretty good games. Obviously, I think that the Patriots game was a little kind of undervalued because of the snow there. But it was kind of a great finish. Like, obviously, but neither team could move the ball in the second half. I was a little worried for Justin and his after Jarrett Stidham took them down the field to start the game. I was like, wow, okay, maybe he was on to something. But in the end, he did exactly what I think we all expected and turned the ball over multiple times and pretty much gave the Patriots their best chance to go back to the Super Bowl. So that game, I think, kind of went the way we expected it, outside of the crazy weather affecting what I think would have been a little bit more scoring. But in terms of the Seahawks and Rams, I mean, that was a fantastic game. That, of course, I picked the Rams. I was wrong on that one. You guys were on me there. But it was so close, and it felt like the Rams had opportunities. And to me, I think Sean McVay, if he could go back, he'd probably kick that field goal earlier on. And I think it was still in the fourth quarter to cut it to a 1-point game and give them a chance at the end. But he didn't do that. Instead, they needed to go down the field. And even though Seattle played great and didn't give them much time, I think it was like 25 seconds left, but even to get down the field and score a touchdown, there's no guarantee they go down and get a field goal either. So all credit to the Seahawks. I'm excited to watch them play in the Super Bowl. And yeah, the Patriots they're back, I guess, which sucks.
Cristian, what do you got?
Oh, man, I don't know if I've got many specifics from those games on the Pats-Broncos side of things. That one actually, and I don't know if that one for you conflicted as well, Mando, but we had a Leaf game going up head-to-head against that at 2 p.m., so it was a dual-screen scenario for me at work. The weather, seeing the weather change, kind of looking back and forth between the Leaf game and then being like, wait, what the hell's going on here? I swear the broadcast started, it was like -2 degrees. It looked like an awesome weather game. And then, you end up with something not so much like that. So yeah, I don't have anything specific from that game. I wish that Justin was here to tell us I told you so on Jarrett Stidham. I think I prefer that reality than the Patriots being in the Super Bowl reality. But nonetheless, in that Rams-Seahawks game, once again, I just want to give my kudos to I'm going to give it to the coaches in this one. Mike McDonald, I think, making a name for himself. I think people will know his name. Some of the conversations I had at work too, I purposely didn't bring up his name in some conversations to see if people knew who Mike McDonald was. Some people did not pass the test. Listen, I'm guilty. I had to look it up a couple weeks ago as well. But Sean McVay as well, the passion that he brings on the bench is 10 out of 10. I love it. That's a guy who, in hockey, I always talk about, I love cheering for players who do the Viking celly. They celebrate every goal like it is a Stanley Cup winning goal. Some of the guys that point to for that are Morgan Riley on the Leafs and Mark Stone on Vegas. He definitely had a Viking celly against the Leafs last week. And I think Sean McVay would be the coach for my team of only Viking celly guys. He is the guy for that. So kudos to both those guys. That was a great game. Give me the Seahawks against the Patriots, though. I know it's a rematch from over a decade ago, but I'm riding with the Seahawks. The vibes there are so good. The Sam Darnold story is 10 out of 10 entertainment. I would love for Super Bowl MVP Sam Darnold. Let's go that route.
I like that. I like that a lot. I keep this is the middle of the media week, and next Monday, Tuesday, we'll get a lot more of the stories coming out as the week progresses. You'll see Radio Row in San Francisco. There's going to be amazing stories that comes out of that. But Sam Darnold, his story has already sort of been leaked and slowly building as we get closer to the Super Bowl, and to not rehash everything, but ultimately his underdog, not really underdog, because you're drafted 3rd overall, you're expected to perform, but ever since that moment, trending in the wrong direction, and then almost a complete 180 last year in Minnesota and continuing. I think he's one of the only, if not the only, quarterback in NFL history to do back-to-back 14-win seasons with different teams.
You're right.
Right?
You're right.
Which is
Yeah,
Him and Tom Brady, I
teams.
believe, are the
Yeah,
only
maybe
guys
Tom
who have
Brady.
done it in general.
Different teams. Yeah, look at that. He
Decent-
stands alone,
yeah.
man. That's it.
Decent
Wow.
company, right? Like it all ties together this episode apparently with our conversations.
Ah.
But he's doing what he needs to do, and he might not be in the top 10 of quarterbacks, but look at what he has, and it's ultimately, like you said, Cristian, it's coaching. Mike Macdonald's able to get this group together. He's a defensive-minded guy, and to be able to have weapons like Rashid Shaheed come in halfway through the season and provide a spark. We talk about spark from Sean McVay. He's a kind of guy that maybe underrated before he came here in terms of, yes, he's got the speed, but does he have much else? He's been able to make some great plays, obviously on the kickoff, but ultimately he made a couple of great catches in that NFC game. Yeah.
First drive, right? It's like this guy on first plays of the games, he's just 10 out of 10.
Unbelievable. So I'm also going to take the Seahawks because I just think that they have more guys, more weapons. I think they're a little bit more dynamic. I will say, though, I'm done underestimating the Patriots. I'm done talking about how everything against them because, look, they're in the Super Bowl. Now, do they deserve to be there? I think that's a loaded question. I think you have beat 3 teams to make it there. You did come second in the AFC. I'm not happy about it, but I will acknowledge that it's a pretty incredible feat to be back there with Mike Vrabel and his squad. So it's an all-Mike Bowl. That's interesting. We could have had an all-Sean Bowl. We could have had an all-Mike Bowl, or we could have mixed a Sean or a Mike. We got all Mikes. So that was kind of a fun little tidbit. And before I get Brandon, your take on the Super Bowl, I do want to say, I had mentioned when we were watching that, I think it was the NFC Championship game. I was with my parents that night, and I look at my dad. I'm like, I don't think there's a guy that moves. Like, I've never seen Sean McVay still. He's always in motion on the sidelines. And I just think, like you said, he's got all this pent up energy and he has nowhere else to put it but in his legs back and forth. So that's a guy you can get behind. But I also think Mike Vrabel and Mike Macdonald are both guys you can get behind in different ways in their demeanor and their mannerisms. Give me the Seahawks. Brandon, what do you got for us?
No doubt. I think the level of coaches that we saw in the Final Four, teams in the NFL was maybe 4 of the best coaches in the league. Really, like it's true the fact that in a league like the NFL, you really need a good strong leader, but you also need incredibly smart strategy and everything like that. So I think for that reason, I'm going to take the Seahawks. I just love the way that they play, especially on defense. They're so strong as a unit. They don't break ever. They barely bend at all. Like they are just so incredibly tough. And what we've seen in the past when it's, good, top defense against good offense, it's usually the defense that comes out on top. And so I think for me, it's going to come down to that. And that's why I think I'll take the Seahawks as well. But boy, I kind of was worried about once the weather started rolling in, it's 3-point game in Denver. I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, Justin is going to be insufferable if they lose, if the Patriots lose. But also I was thinking it's like it probably would have been a similar argument if the Broncos had won to the Patriots. Like, did they deserve to be there? They probably shouldn't have beaten New England, but they got lucky with a blizzard that came in the second half and it became a kicking game. Like it would have been an incredible narrative to see how it would have gone. And then obviously nobody would pick them to pick against the Seahawks going in with Stidham, as the quarterback, it feels. So it was just one of those things where I think it's worked out the way it probably was supposed to in the AFC. And I think that's why the Patriots deserve a lot of credit for getting there. But I think this is kind of where their Cinderella story will end.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll have a lot more conversation about the Super Bowl next week. Hopefully Justin's back for that because his team is involved. And so I'm sure he'll have a lot to say, whether he's confident or whether he's not confident. Maybe we'll get into some prop bets. We'll see where the conversation takes us. But some highs and lows in football. If you're, like I said off the top, if you're a fan of hockey in general, you're probably feeling pretty good. It's been an interesting season and the Olympics are coming up. But if you're specifically a Toronto hockey fan, I don't know if it gets much worse than how you're feeling right now. The Leafs, our beloved Leafs, they've gone 0-4-1 on their recent home stretch. Probably something you shouldn't be able to do or shouldn't do if you're interested in making the playoffs this year. After the Ottawa Senators win last night, as in Wednesday night against Colorado, they are now last in the Atlantic, or the TML, the Buds there. And I don't really know where you go from here. There's been a lot of conversation about a lot of different topics. We could probably get to as many of them as kind of our brains will let us think about. But I don't really know if there's a place that you guys want to start. I know we'll touch on a recent article that was interesting, but maybe we should just start with, is it at this point, boys, are we admitting defeat? Cristian, I think, is it ultimately just time to kind of sell and move forward? What are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I think sell is definitely the direction to go here. It is now just a matter of where on the sell scale are you? Soft sell, heavy sell. Where do you fall on that? But no, I think buying is out of the question. Standing pat, I don't know. Do they have to go 4-0 on this Western road swing headed into the Olympic break to even consider that? I need this team to make up their mind going into the break is where I'm at. They need to have a concrete plan, maybe not just for this deadline, but the summer next year. What does all of this stuff look like? There's a lot of planning that needs to be done. And yeah, I'm just on that homestand, watching every second of said homestand. Yeah, very disappointing. And I think the popular take from this stretch, and maybe when I say stretch, it could extend to the Matthews era, is there seems to be a pattern with minimizing the importance of games, minimizing the pressure heading into a fan viewpoint big game. And it's never really worked out for them. And I think the biggest thing for me is a week ago, they understood the importance of the game in Vegas. They lost the game 6-5. They blew 4 2-goal leads in said game, but I can at least say they showed up to start the game and they were engaged in said game. They lost it. That one hurt real bad, but I didn't question whether they gave a shit. Okay.
Yeah.
I think against Mitch Marner at home, I think we have some of those question marks. And I think that I don't know how you reconcile that. I really don't know how you do that. And now the question is, how much reconciliation do we need? Is just trading Bobby McMahon as a pending UFA, maybe dabbling in a Nick Robertson trade with him needing a new contract, Scott Lawton. These are regular sell pieces, and I think we're questioning if we have to go beyond there. Maybe not to the point of Austin Matthews, William Nylander, although that is kind of where it starts. But maybe we're talking about an OEL who's got 2 years after this, a Carlo who's got a year after this. Maybe not a good time. His value is probably not very high, but I think those are the conversations we have to have. The conversations are worth having. Maybe we don't end up doing those types of things, but this is the first time in the Matthews era where we are heavily considering it. And I think it's, to some extent, the selling part of it is going to be a reality. We remember when Taysom Berry was a Leaf and heading into, I know those long time ago before COVID, but there was a conversation about trading him before the deadline. They didn't go that route, but they talked about it. We're going to talk about trades, and this time they are going to happen. So,
yeah. No,
curtains if you're asking me though on playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point, this season, it's definitely a lost season, and it definitely changes the way that you view the future of the team, obviously. But I'm definitely in like the soft sell. I like the light sell. I'm big on that phrase. I think a light sell where you look at your upcoming free agents, you look at maybe your aging players who have even if they have a little bit of term, you try to work, on just recouping as many assets as you can possibly get. But I think you kind of let things play out in terms of the bigger picture, like Cristian, I think, alluded to. It's like you can't really go and make snap decisions based on one season. But I think there's definitely a case to be made that there are overarching issues with the team, and that comes down to the core group of guys that are here. I think you go into the offseason and you really have to look, if you're, Leafs brass, whoever that is. You can't really say it's Treliving at this point. You can't really say it's Craig Berube. I think both of those guys, their futures are up in the air with this team. So I think one way or the other in the offseason, you're looking at some sort of reflection at what you want to do with the group, and you start moving in a direction that serves you better over the long term, as opposed to, it feels like over the last even 2, 3, 4 years, however long it's been, like a year by year process. And I think now is the time to kind of scrap that and say, hey, let's join the rest of the guys in the NHL who actually think about developing a team and building an organization. Meanwhile, there are a few teams that can survive by, going for it, but that's usually after they've gone and built a great culture and have depth and have a lot of things that the Leafs just don't have right now. So it's been disappointing, but I definitely can see, at least them getting some clarity, hopefully, out of what's happened here, and try to move forward with that in mind, and really try to come up with a positive, viewpoint for their future, because God knows Leafs fans will need some sort of spin on all of this to make them feel better once we get to April and May, and the Leafs aren't a part of any playoff run. So
the year by year thing is interesting, and I've normally been more against the idea of we're just going to retool, because I always find that maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you're not really like getting to the heart of the issue. But now that we're discussing it from a team that I'm a lot more involved in and can focus really heavily on, I think it's possible. I mean, you've seen an example with the Boston Bruins last year, maybe not to the same extent, but they're in playoff conversations right now, and they're a team that maybe is structured differently, and maybe the way they're managed has been differently. There may have been managed the last little while is different, I should say. But I think there's so many different issues with the group that I just don't know if it's worth making the changes, when not to single out one player or one set of players, but there was a leadership conversation, a couple games ago, and it almost looked like it made it worse. Right? Like you play Buffalo, and I know you lose, but ultimately it just felt like the way that the team ended up just sort of collapsing. Matthews makes it 2-1, and then you're thinking, okay, maybe there's a possibility that we can kind of climb out, and it just goes downhill from there. A couple really unlucky bounces, but ultimately that's kind of the way that the Leafs season has gone, is those bounces generally don't go in, but the way things have been trending is it doesn't go in. And I like the point too, Cristian, you brought up about making, like, sort of understanding the importance of games from like different perspectives. And I worry that the way this team is run from a leadership perspective is just it's broken. I don't know if it's Matthews directly, but why does it never feel like he's that invested in anything that's been going on in like on the ice or in the media? You don't need to come out and talk all the time. That's not what I'm asking, but I just don't understand like why it never feels like there's a lot of heart in the group when stuff like this kind of comes to fruition. And I don't know if I don't know if it's the right decision to move on from a big piece right now. I don't think you should be, unless there's something really on the table and you're really thinking this thing through, and that would come in the offseason. I don't know if that's the right decision. I am more on the retool side, but I just question whether small moves are going to really get to the heart of this group, where we've seen in the past 9-10 seasons, it hasn't really gotten over the hump that we've thought. So I wonder if there's I don't know if like a Morgan Riley is the first guy you look at and say maybe he's a guy you kind of think. I don't know. Who do you think survives this offseason? Do we think we have general managers, coaches? Like who do we think survives it, and who should? I don't know if, Cristian, you have thoughts on like the management side of things here.
Yeah, I think if you're asking me what I would like, I think they've tried so much over the Matthews era. And maybe the one thing they haven't tried, and I don't know how willing they're going to be, is change everything, like change as much as you can, except the core guys. Like, except Austin Matthews, Willie Nylander, Matthew Knies, maybe John Tavares, you throw in there as well. Maybe like Joseph Wall. Everything else, if you throw everything else on the table, and that's not just on the ice, like I think I would be cool with a totally new direction at coach and GM. But I'm not expecting that. I'm really not expecting that. I think it is going to be more of that light sell, retool, soft sell, use whatever terminology you want, and a bit of a half measure. The Boston viewpoint that you brought up there, I wonder if you gave Don Sweeney the truth serum, right? Is he admitting, did he think this Boston Bruins team this year would be as good as they are? No shot, right? They did not do their sell-off last year with this in mind. Like, this was a surprise. So I think if you're a Leafs fan and you want more of that kind of like teetering closer to the heavier sell, like the Bruins did give up some hefty names. We can go, I can make that comparison in a second here, but you have to prepare for the idea that you're not good next year. You don't get a full Boston Bruins turnaround that quickly. And that is very, very, very scary when said Boston Bruins have your pick, right? Like, it is very scary. And I don't know if a light sell isn't going to get you into this bottom five. I don't think. Things would have to go very off the rails. Maybe, but the once again, with the Bruins, I just want to bring this up quickly. They traded Trent Frederick, 2nd and 4th. Very good value in hindsight there. I think we have a Trent Frederick. Like, I think Bobby McMahon has more value than a Trent Frederick.
Yeah.
We can do that. Justin Brazeau, they got Murat Husnudinov, who is actually a guy. He's a guy. He plays on the first line for the Bruins from time to time. He has turned into something there. And a 6th-round pick. Charlie Coyle turned into Casey Middlestat, a 2nd-rounder, and William Zellers, who I don't think is signed yet, but he was a standout for USA at the World Juniors. That was a very, very good trade. Middlestat hasn't totally turned out, but you like the shot there. Like, you like taking that shot. Brad Marchand, I don't think we have a Brad Marchand asset, unfortunately. He fetched just a 1st-round pick from Florida. And Brandon Carlo to us. We have a Brandon Carlo. His name is Brandon Carlo. I don't think we're getting the same type of return back. But yeah, to me, I'm cool with letting go of Bobby McMahon. I've made my peace with that. I think I would have even entertained a trade in the summer to avoid getting to this point, because I personally am not interested in signing him long-term. I don't mind him as a player. I don't love him. Scott Lawton, I think he is a culture guy. He's someone, to your point, Mando, where we all aren't very happy with the leadership. Scott Lawton kind of unanimously, if he was going in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, might be unanimous here, okay, from Leafs Nation. Great approval rating. Maybe that depends on the number he wants of free agency, but and Nick Robertson, that is the other one. I know he's an RFA. You have his rights. I think the Mason Marchment trade in the summer, for me, is what I point to as an example of the value disappearing in the summer. So I want to make the most of Nick Robertson's, like, he's had a great breakout year. You can't have, and this is a point that's been brought up before, a quarter of your forward group being 5'8" in Michelli, Cowan, Robertson, and Domi. Your mind is already made up contractually, because Domi's here for the long-ish haul, and Cowan you're not trading if you're retooling. So I like Michelli. If I'm choosing between the two, I'm keeping Michelli. I'm trading Nick Robertson. That is where I'm at here.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I mean, to go back to the question, I think I'm more likely, or I think it's more likely that I battle with this, but I think at some point, I think the issue between Berube and Treliving has been that I don't think Treliving has given Berube a team that he wants to, like, is best suited to coach. And so I think that doing what Cristian said is a good idea, to just completely flip the script, change the culture, and try to build something from the studs. Basically, I think Chris Pronger said something like that, to that effect, on Overdrive yesterday or the other day. But I think if you can bring in a general manager who can work with the coach who's already there, who knows these guys, unless the favor has completely fallen with Matthews and Nylander, and they don't want to play for Berube anymore, I think you maybe try to keep him around, and then you try to bring in a new GM who can work directly with Berube and bring in the type of players that you want. Because if you're able to free up a ton of cap space, if you're able to accumulate some more picks, bring in some prospects, it gives you the flexibility to try to work towards what you think your team's next identity, I guess, should be. For a while they were a speed and skill team who could defend pretty well. Now that identity is kind of out the window and nobody really knows what it is. So start to move towards something that you can build on, and hopefully that does involve a change in the culture, or the change in their accountability, because absolutely, Alex, they have not treated a lot of games this season as important as they have been, especially after they got off to a poor start. That wasn't necessarily their fault in terms of injuries and things that have not gone their way, but there hasn't been that type of response outside of a couple weeks this season. So I think it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the way things go, and when it's been this long.
Yeah. I will say there's been a big reservation over the past few years, or I guess a big conversation over the past few years, of this roster is good enough. They just don't have it, whatever it is, whether that's heart for some people, whether that's the ability to kind of shut out the noise. There's a lot of been theories of why the roster hasn't been able to get it done. I think this is the first year that I've actually heard a lot of people just say the roster is just not good enough. And like, they're trying, but they just don't have the pieces to make the adjustments. And your back end's very slow. They're getting outshot. I was doing some research today. They've outshot opponents 12 times this year. They played 53 games. It's a style, but it's also the personnel that you're employing. So I think, yeah, selling is very obvious. I think it's the first time in a long time that we've allowed this team to become sellers. I think a lot of people are like, let's see what we can do. Because even if you're going to do a retool, you can't do it with the pieces you have right now. Like all the assets you have are a Ben Danford or an Easton Cowan, and that's counterintuitive to the conversation of, hey, we're going to start selling and we're going to try and retool. So the summer conversation, Cristian's interesting, because I do think when you get like a Nick Robertson, I do think his value is almost as highest, if not the highest it's ever been right now, because he is contributing. I think Easton Cowan, even if you're going to try and move him right now, I think he's at the lowest point of value. He's been fighting it the past few weeks. I don't know what changes are going to be made, but I am reserved to the fact that they need to be made. And I think whether it's a big piece or not, it's going to be a new foundation and a new territory for this group. So maybe they stick around, does the Tree Livings and Berubes of the world, to say, well, since we're changing a direction, we're curious to see if you can manage the change, and maybe you're more suited for bringing in a different group, as you suggested, Brandon. So I don't know if there's additional thoughts we have on this, Cristian. You did mention an interesting article that we had a chance to review today. I don't know if that's the direction you want to go, or if there's any meat left on the bone here of this team that we kind of haven't discussed yet.
I think we're gonna have lots of time to eat this
Sure.
buffet. This is gonna be a multi-course meal, so we can leave that for now, and
Sure.
yeah, we can definitely get into that article if you want here. I'll introduce it. Jonas Siegel of the Athletic put out a very interesting article this morning, 6 a.m. Great for your morning coffee, titled "Why Did the Maple Leafs Eliminate a Job Designed to Keep Players Healthy?" And the basis of it starts with Dr. Jeremy Bettel, who was hired by Kyle Dubas when he was co-GMing with Mark Hunter. This is prior to the Lou Lamoriello era of the Maple Leafs. And he was the team's director of sports science and performance. And he had that job, I think, up until Dubas left, and he followed him to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
We then had one of his right-hand man type of guys, someone that I think he at least had a connection to. Don't have his first name up here. I think it was Roddenberry is the last name. He did that role in the post Dubas era, and we didn't retain him heading into this year. So that role has gone kaput. People are going to point to the injuries we have suffered this year. You know what? They've got it here as well. I think we've lost the fourth most man games this season.
I think it's 8. It's 8, but
okay.
it's still not good.
They are on a downturn from where they were under Bettel. There is multiple quotes here I'll get to from him. He talks about how they went 3.5 years with a non-contact injury sustained by the Maple Leafs, and how that's basically unheard of in sports. Mm-hmm. That is very, very impressive. You know, I'm of two minds here, because I remember not this time last year. It was after the Florida series. It was after the second round, heading into the off season, that people were talking about there being too much bloat in the Leafs front office, and like front office extending to some of this type of personnel and staff. That was something that people talked about in the media, and kind of said, like, you need to focus, you need to refine who the personnel is on your staff. There might be too many voices at too many levels. So it'd be very hypocritical of me for, after having that conversation last year, to come here and say, you need more of these voices, whatever. But there is a middle ground that needs to be reached here. And yeah, this seems like a pretty important spot. One of the things I immediately thought of was back to the Blue Jays, who developed a reputation for not having a great support staff when it came to health. Then they improved that area, specifically with their Dunedin facility, right? Mm-hmm. For off-season training, all this type of stuff. It is the talk of the town. Scott Boras, I think, probably still brings it up every time he talks about the Jays. Like, it was a difference maker. So I think the reality is, you do need more voices. You need the right voices. That's easier for me to say, but I think that the results bear out here. And this is a very interesting article. I'll bring up some quotes here, but what were your guys' thoughts from it?
Yeah, do you have a chance to go through it, Brandon?
No, but I think Cristian pretty much gave me all the information I pretty much need in terms of the general basis around the story, and it reminds me a lot of the Raptors. I mean, they didn't get rid of him, but they have. I think he's one of the top dogs in terms of their health and performance department, and that's Alex McKechnie, who got kind of famous, I think, when Kawhi was here, and it became like a thing where it was like Kawhi was famously, still is, I'm sure, very private about his health, and was very conservative, but I think they had found kind of a groove with him here. And I think to Christian's point about a middle ground, I think it's so easy when things are going well to take for granted the things that seem so easy to do, I guess, at that point. Like it's so ingrained in their system and everything that they do on a day-to-day basis that, you think you can keep it going, even if you minimize, the effect or get rid of certain people, and try to, kind of run it in-house or whatever the situation is. And oftentimes it just doesn't work out that way. And I'm sure at some point soon, we'll see the Leafs, reach out and maybe, again, start to grow their own, health and safety department and start to, reinvest in those kind of treatments to make sure that they don't have another season like this. Because while I can't speak to non-contact injuries this year, I mean, it feels like that's been a little bit of a thing, at least with certain players over the past few seasons since Dubas and co, I guess, have left. So it's just going to be interesting to see how they deal with this, and if we hear anything of stemming from this article, if the Leafs come out and offer any transparency about that decision. Not that they really need to, but what their kind of goal is around that now, and if they feel like they need to take another step forward in some capacity. So,
yeah, I don't know all the ins and outs of the organization, but I think this day and age, it's a big factor. And I know in that article, I think it was suggested that the Leafs do pour certain support, money into support with like mental health. And I know that you read that as well, Christian. So it's not like we're out here saying that they aren't putting any support in that. But if you're looking at a specific individual who in this article, it was basically discussed that he worked directly with Mike Babcock and his word was essentially gold. It was like, it was never decided against. If so-and-so had to sit out or if practice couldn't be scheduled this day because of the sleep schedule or the schedule on the ice, it was pretty much taken as gospel. So I think someone like that is important to have in the organization, especially for right now, a team that is as old as it is. The goal is probably not to have such an old team, especially an old defensive core, for long. It's clearly hindering them in different aspects. But I think it's in this day and age, one more example we haven't brought up that was sort of linked there was to Dunedin and to the Jays was, I think Dylan Cease has said a lot about the reasons he's here is obviously because of winning culture, but because of the support staff and what they can do for him. And I think a lot of what ties that in is like, if you're going to be the best pitcher, you're going to hopefully be, a lot of the people in the organization, likely those individuals that keep you healthy, are going to be a big part of why you choose a team in the first place. So I don't know. There's a reason this article came out when it did. I think hopefully the team is looking into it. And I'm sure because of the team that they have in front of them, this conversation has probably been had, hopefully within the front office, especially if they're going to retool or rebuild. You have to look at probably the entire organization and not just the product on the ice. I'd be interested if this changes anything or if we hear about any changes in the coming months, mainly the offseason. I know you had some quotes you wanted to get to.
Yeah, so it's just to tie the knots basically together there. And to your point, like if I'm guessing what comes out of this, I think there will be a summer hire where, like, no matter who is in charge, someone will be hiring somebody. Maybe not for this direct role, they'll just change the name around. There will be somebody doing something similar to this. First knot to tie here from Brando bringing up Alex McKechnie. He's brought up in this article.
Let's go.
I'm gonna read here. There you go. All right. Raptors, meanwhile, were employing Alex McKechnie. This is before Beto was hired.
Yes.
Raptors are employing Alex McKechnie as their vice president of player health and performance since 2011. It was on the recommendation of McKechnie, a close friend, that Beto came on the Leafs' radar.
That's hilarious.
McKechnie is the one who got Beto this interview.
It makes
basically.
sense. Yeah.
Can we go back to Mr. McKechnie, Leafs? Like, I think that's what we should do.
Right.
Hey, McKechnie, you got anybody else you could recommend? Show us your Rolodex, buddy. Yeah,
that's hilarious.
So that's a great starting point. Get McKechnie on the line, please, Pally. And then the other knot to tie there, you brought it up, Mando, the point about never being overruled. It's just this, because I think when I first saw this headline appear, and when I started the article, you have some of these quotes, but I'm sitting there asking myself, okay, but what do you do? Can you tell me what you were doing that was very important?
Sure.
Like, you're telling me this is important. I need to have, not that you're going to get into the specifics here. I won't understand them. Give me something that gives me an idea. So Siegel writes, On the day the NHL schedule was announced each summer, Bettel and Babcock would sit down together and plan out the team's practice schedule with an eye on sleep, travel, off days, whatever was necessary to keep the group as fresh and healthy over the long grind of 82 games. Constant balancing act required fine-tuning throughout, having players sit out practice if the tracking data from the new technology at the time showed they were fatigued or at risk. He never once overruled us, says Bettel of Babcock. If we said a guy couldn't practice, if we said a guy wasn't ready to play, or if we said a guy shouldn't play. They then give an example about Joffrey Lupul and how Bettel's data was showing that Lupul would favor one side of his lower body and then later be favoring another side. And they said, hey, Babs, this is a huge major red flag. This is the one time where they actually had to battle Babs about this. And he said, well, if you don't know what it is, then like you need to come with me with more. And then lo and behold, midway through that season, Lupul has not just a season-ending injury, it's a career-ending injury. So they won that battle pretty clearly, and I think he had even more say after that. So Battle definitely put in a good light in this article, to your point, Mando. I think it's very interesting and very pertinent timing on this one here. Yeah, just go to McKechnie. Get me the next medal, please. Maybe he's got a son that's
I wonder if
interesting reading, very interesting.
If when Dubas and Bettel, I guess when they took off, was that the start of the day-to-day questions in terms of, because I can't imagine like the way you're talking about this guy, like there wouldn't have been any questions about the seriousness of injuries or how we're going to purvey it or when guys are going to be back on the ice. Like this year specifically, but I'm sure in previous years as well, there have just been more incidences of seemingly, misunderstanding in terms of what injuries are or what they're, how to deal with them or what is going on, or at least from Berube's eyes. It feels like he's not getting maybe the information he needs to properly assess things, or maybe he's just been, a better actor than I've thought. But yeah, I think you're right, Cristian. And it's not so much about throwing money at a position. It's about the right people. And if McKechnie, is a guy you can go to and he can potentially offer some advice, I think you got to lean on the best people to help you find the right guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say too.
Okay, go ahead,
give it
Mando.
To
I just have one last quote, but if you got something before we wrap up.
So small, and it's just more of a like tongue-in-cheek point, but basically Bettel joined Dubas in Pittsburgh, and look at where Pittsburgh is. They were the only sellers and non-competers this year. They're in a playoff spot. Or they're at least close at the time of recording.
I wonder where they are.
What the hell's going on?
That might be interesting. Maybe I missed it. I did read
I'm not saying it's him. I'm not saying it's him. Dan Muse is there.
No, I'm kidding.
It might be him. How crazy would it be? So that's just fun fact there for you kids.
Maybe the 2% it's him, right? He factors in for sure.
Sure.
Just last quote here. Just his take on the Leafs this year. He says, "I'm not blaming the staff. I'm blaming the structure. It's just not set up for them to not have injuries." Battle is very vehement here in saying, "Come on, you guys are screwing this up right now." So, I would very much encourage anybody interested in the Leafs, and maybe you're just interested in more like this health side of things. Read this article. This was very, very good. Siegel always 10 out of 10 articles, but this one hit the spot today.
I wonder how he knew that. Like if he's just looking from the outside and he can tell, like, or if he actually that's a very damning like he's taking a shot. Like that's a lot. So not a good look. Yeah.
So hopefully we see, I think, to wrap it up in general, the Leafs conversation, hopefully a direction is decided on. I think you hit the nail on the head, Cristian. There needs to be a conversation or decision by this Olympic break, whether that's the play on the ice is decisive enough for them to make a direction. But knowing the team that we followed for our entire lives, they go 4-0 on this road stretch, and we have no clue what goes on. So I think a decision, whether that's because they have no choice or because they have the choice and they're in the driver's seat now, I think a lot of people are just subject to the fact that here, whatever happens, you just need to make a choice. Don't leave us hanging. So more to come, hopefully next week when we're at a point exactly where it'll be in the Olympic break next Thursday. So we'll have more to talk about. We have two quick hits. Two quick hits that we wanted to discuss. We might as well stay in the NHL. Last night, Chris Johnston reports that Artemi Panarin is not in the lineup for the Rangers game last night, and therefore for the purposes of roster management, essentially, if I'm paraphrasing. But we've all been around the maybe not the rink, but around the industry enough to know he's likely on his way out, whether that's now or whether that's after the roster freeze on the 4th and somewhere around the March 6th deadline. I don't know if anyone has thoughts of where he could go. There's been speculation. We're not really surprised. Any reaction to this? Brandon, you take this one away. Reactions to the Panarin out of the lineup last night.
I was sort of surprised that they were going to hold him out, I guess. I understand, like, you never want to risk injury. He's not like a young player. He's 34 years old, and it might be a tough one to move, so I can understand, I guess, from that perspective. But yeah, I think the writing's been on the wall in New York. Similar to the Leafs, honestly, like it probably worse because they just have not performed well. And you look back at how this team was built, and there's definitely some question marks around their core as well. So, I mean, you're going to move off Panarin, no doubt. They might move off some other pieces as well. And from there, you kind of have to take it from the studs again. But I want to see what happens with Panarin in terms of where he'll go. I'm thinking he's going to end up in the Western Conference, but I really don't have a good idea of what specific team is going to take the plunge and try to bring him in and I assume try to win a Stanley Cup. So I mean, there are options out there. I'm sure the Rangers will have to get creative in terms of the best way for them to move him and to get what they think they can get back and but I never liked the idea of like basically spelling out to everyone that you're trading a guy. Like, I understand insiders are going to report it. There's going to be info out there, but to basically say like, hey, we're roster management, we're about to trade this guy. Like it to me, it's not the smartest business, but I understand that they're in a spot right now where they kind of got to do what they got to do and just work as fast as possible. It feels like, so we'll see what happens, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
It's not smart business, but I don't know how much smart business Chris Drury has really done, to be honest, over his tenure. It's just it has not been a great stretch in New York. He's even pulling out the previous management's their ace of we put out the statement. That'll do it, right? Come on, buddy, come on. No, it's very bad vibes there. I think I've got a couple of thoughts here. We'll run through them quick, but I think one of my first ones is I feel like and maybe it's because we have so much time until the deadline with a whole Olympic tournament in between, but I feel like the hoopla around this isn't as big for who Panarin is. Like, this is a guy who's over a point per game still. I think he's 34. Like, he is old, right? He doesn't scream 34, but he is. And I just think I look back to Marchand last year, and that I think is maybe my comparison here, my comp. And I just feel like there was so much noise around Brad Marchand. And I think you could very easily make the argument that Artemi Panarin is on level and maybe a little bit ahead of Brad Marchand in terms of the player he is today. Just some stuff that was reported. I think Elliot had all of this on Fan Hockey Show. He said, Panarin's more interested in going somewhere where he can sign an extension. So he's not too interested in being a rental. And B, Florida is his preferred destination, but that's not very likely. God. This makes a lot of sense, though. You think back to when he was in Columbus. Remember, we were expected the duo of Bob and Panarin to end up in Florida, and we only end up with Bob going there. I'm sure Panarin is maybe looking over there and saying, I've had a really good time here in New York. Like, I've led the team in scoring every year, but not any cups to my name. Bob's got a couple. Maybe I could get in on that. God, it is a tiring thought to think of that, though. And speaking to your point, Brando, of Western Conference team, and Mando, I'll let you jump in. San Jose has been mentioned as a team willing to extend him. Yeah. I think the question I want to pose to you, though, is I think they used maybe some of these assets in a Kiefer Sherwood trade not too long ago, 2 second-round picks, because I don't know, are you throwing around first-round picks if you're the San Jose Sharks?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think they're at the point now where they don't want to pick top 5, top 10. I think that ship has sailed with the Misa draft pick last year and going, okay, like we're ready to go. We're not necessarily in the spot where this team's not competing for Stanley Cups. I also think that they're a little surprised where they're at. And it's a Taylor Hall 2014-15 situation, maybe later, where he drags his team into the playoffs with the Devils. I don't think Macklin Celebrini is winning the heart because there's a couple of big dogs that are saying, hey, man, like you have a couple of years before that's an option. But I think this team is showing, and they were rewarded by Mike Greer with Kiefer Sherwood to say, here's a piece that you guys are doing really well, and let's see what you could take with it. I think it would be a home run swing if you're able to pull an Artemi Panarin in, mainly because, you're bringing in a guy that's been around, he's been in the league, and yeah, he's a winger, and maybe you need more center depth. I don't know if Will Smith's a center in the NHL. There's a lot of conversation still thrown around. I wouldn't be opposed to them just throwing the kitchen sink, because I think you have to make a big swing to say, look, like this Western Conference, maybe not the Pacific, but the Western Conference is going to be a bunch of big dogs for the next few years. As much as they're not in that conversation right now, you're going along the likes of all of those big ones in the Central. Edmonton's not going away anytime soon. Vegas is always in the mix. They're willing to trade their mother.
Duking it out with Anaheim, right?
Yeah, you're duking it out with Anaheim's a great pull. I don't know if they're going to – I think it's more of a conversation. I think you're more poised to maybe is there a conversation where Dallas enters the mix, maybe LA because Anze Kopitar is retiring. I think a few 32 Thoughts pods ago, that was the conversation. Dallas still has Jason Robertson if they're going to re-sign. There's a lot of conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if San Jose's not even in this mix by the end of it, even though they're willing to re-sign him. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him in, and regardless of the return, it's a move you got to make to try and shore up a team that's in motion towards success. So I don't know, but I wouldn't hate it. I think
I'm good on the bread man, but yeah, that was good though. Yeah.
I think the last one will switch, and not a lot of basketball talk in this one. The Raptors have been playing really good as of late. They won 3 on the road, and then they got cooked a little last night, or 2 nights ago, if you're listening to this, by the Knicks. But the conversation is that at this point, it's been never really stated. It's sort of a similar situation to Damian Lillard now. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo is willing to listen to being moved elsewhere, possibly to a contender or basically just a change of scenery. And the Milwaukee Bucks are listening this trade deadline at trade talks and offers for a Giannis. Now, Raptors, I think, are in talks of maybe that's somewhere Giannis would be interested in going. I think there's 2 sides of the coin. People are saying, yes, it's Giannis. You kind of have to throw whatever assets you have to bring a guy like that in, where I think a lot of Toronto Raptors media pundits are saying, yes, Giannis is great, but where this team is at and the long-term scope of where this team would like to go, Giannis kind of derails those plans, and who knows where that trajectory takes you. I wonder if you guys maybe just bare bones thoughts of, do you think Giannis is just a piece that would be right for any team? Or do you think it's like maybe the Raptors don't have the pieces to bring a guy like that in? Maybe it doesn't fit. I don't know if you have any thoughts. Maybe Brandon will stick with you. Like, any thoughts on maybe if this is the right move or if this is something that might even come to fruition for the Raptors?
No, I mean, I think it's going to be hard for the Raptors to be, the landing spot for Giannis, just because I think there are other teams that just have more to offer Milwaukee in terms of a potential trade. I'm talking teams that have maybe higher upside younger players, have, maybe better picks available. I think Golden State and San Antonio are 2 teams that I've heard that could put together very good packages for Milwaukee. And not to say that the Raptors wouldn't be able to, but I wouldn't necessarily want to mess with what the Raptors have been building, especially if you have to kind of remove that much from your lineup or from your roster to bring in Giannis. I think he wherever he goes, they're immediately going to be into a contender, mostly because he's not going to a middling club. He's going to go somewhere where he either turns them into a contender right away, or that they're already a contender and he might be the piece to put them over the top. I think of like the Knicks in that kind of scenario. And I do think that that's a possibility, but for the moment, I think it's pretty wide open. I think Milwaukee's going to be open to pretty much any move that they think is going to be the best for their future. And if you're Giannis, like you want to go to a place where you have an opportunity to win another championship, because his career is not going to be going on for forever, and he's at the point now where with just one title in Milwaukee, he has a chance to maybe go somewhere and just add to his legacy over the next couple of seasons. So I think it'll be pretty interesting. But I don't know that I would even do the deal if I'm the Raptors, unless it was a situation where you could kind of hold serve and make maybe more decisions than you're going to have to do when it comes to that deal.
Yeah, I think the reality kind of for the Raptors and their assets for any trade talks, it's Scotty who's untouchable, right? He's at the top of your value pyramid. And then it's kind of a chasm to the next person. Like Brandon Ingram is probably who you're putting there, but you're probably not looking to trade him in general. And still, there's a lot, I think, between a franchise cornerstone and Scotty and sort of these secondary pieces. Everything else that we've kind of talked about in Raptors land has been like salary filler. Like we're looking to move RJ because he makes a lot of money, not necessarily anything to do with his play. Obviously Giannis would be an upgrade, but I don't see Milwaukee being interested in the salary filler trade offer that's going to come from the Raptors. Cool for the Raptors to put it forward. I think Golden State, I think that's something that makes a lot of sense. I saw a report today. Don't know who threw it out there. It was someone of significance, though. They are willing to put out their first round picks into 2032 and all of their pick swaps. That is a lot. Plus, they have a guy with, I think you need someone not of Scotty's value that you can present in a trade offer, but in that next tier who isn't the age of Ingram, but is kind of that quality. To be honest, Jonathan Kuminga probably isn't that guy because he is very much a distressed asset, but you can at least see the world where he is something. He's younger. There is more upside there. He isn't kind of what he is today. He could be a little bit better down the road. I throw my guess on Golden State there. Okay. And then, just as far as Raptors, I don't know. They're going to make the trade deadline is next Thursday. We're a week from the trade deadline. Yeah. I'll just throw this out there as what I would like them to do. Go back to the Pelicans. If you can get Trey Murphy, he's the most enticing name that I've heard thrown out there. I know he's not the big man that we need, right? But I've been looking for a OG Anunoby replacement since we traded him, just as far as my favorite Raptor. Trey Murphy, I think, would do the job for me as a 3-and-D beast. He would be my guy. That's all.
Especially after watching the OG absolutely wreak havoc on the Raptors against the Knicks.
Not a great game, no.
All over the place. I did read a really good article today on The Athletic by Eric Kareen, Raptors reporter, basically saying all these big names are great, but they need to address their shooting, whether it's beyond the arc or just shooting in general. And he listed out a couple names, but Trey Murphy being one guy who kind of fits the bill as much as possible. And unfortunately, a guy like Emmanuel Quickley, who was probably brought in here to address some of that shooting, just has not had a good year. He's had his up and down moments. Of late, he's played okay, and I think you're sort of increasing
more up than down, yeah.
In more up than down, which if you're looking towards maybe moving him for somebody of significance, maybe that helps. I don't know enough to say I know specific guys that would fit. Giannis has been, we didn't even talk about this, but we put out a post a few days ago with all of our top 10 fun athletes to watch. And Giannis was on mine because I love to watch him. I love his personality. I think it'd be absolutely incredible for marketing, money brought into the Raptors in general. If you're looking at it from a business perspective, that guy's like a unicorn. But I do think I'm interested in this version of the Raptors. They are also in a position where I don't think a lot of people saw them in third or fourth in the East right now, but they're progressing sort of ahead of schedule. And you don't want to mess with those long-term plans if that's kind of the game in order to kind of be back on top and hopefully win another chip. It'd be fun, but I don't know if they would be. Yeah, I don't know if you can just go. It's like the whole Twitter, here's my trade. Here's one first rounder, a second rounder, and IQ. I don't know if that's going to really move
back
the
to
needle.
The days of I think the Leafs offer. There's been so many over the years, but the token offer was Andrew Nielsen, a Jeremy Bracco, Connor Brown, second round pick. Just this smorgasbord of nothing, to be honest.
For Connor McDavid. Yeah,
exactly. Meadow, I just wanted to talk about when you brought this topic up and kind of the Shams report of I think it was, I forget the specific wording of he's open to a new home, or basically it's they make sure all these reporters to say anything but that he has requested a trade, because I think to your point with the Dame stuff, right, it's that wants to have that loyalty with the fan. I respect it to a certain point, and I feel over the past month I've been real tired of the just no one will blame you, Giannis, I think, for asking out. I don't think anybody would, or just the organization for being the one to ask him. It's just been this long dance for I don't know what. I don't know. It's just something to observe. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Any other thoughts before we wrap things up, boys? It's been an interesting week. I think we should have some fun this weekend. I know there's the Pro Bowl. That's pretty much it, and some Leafs, but we'll kind of tee up Super Bowl next week. Any final thoughts, or are we good to wrap up here?
No, I'm good. I'm excited to. I'm sure next week
Nice.
we'll get into this, maybe a little bit of Olympics too, as we head to Milan.
Yes.
I guess, or not us, but the
I
the
wish.
athletes who actually get to take part. And yeah, we'll have I'm sure a bigger Super Bowl preview, like I said, with Justin included. So that would be great.
Guys, I don't think I know a single person who's in the Pro Bowl other than Shedeur Sanders, and I learned that I did not learn that by my choice. But
No.
yeah, I'll go watch that for sure. Fun as
I
always,
do
guys.
think most things I've learned about Shedeur Sanders have been against my will,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth. So that's just the way it is. But great episode, boys. A lot to talk about next week. Hopefully we have the whole crew on with us. Thanks for listening. Like, follow, subscribe, engage as much as possible. Otherwise, we will chat next week.